Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com. Today we're going to make a gingerbread cake, and this is what it looks like. This cake is wonderfully soft and moist, and of course because it's gingerbread, it is just full of flavor. So the first thing you need to do to make our cake is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and then your pan. Now, I consider this like a snacking cake, which is more of a casual, like a weeknight dessert. So I'm using an 8-inch square, which is 20 centimeter baking pan. But if you prefer, you can use a 9-inch, 23 centimeter round cake pan. So either one. And then I like to butter my pan and then flour it. Now you could use one of those non-stick sprays that actually have flour in them, so you could use that, or I'm using like more of the old-fashioned method. I've melted just a little butter, and then I'm taking a pastry brush and just buttering the bottom and the sides. Now I don't know whether I mentioned, but make sure either your 8-inch or your 9-inch pan has 2-inch, which is about 5 centimeter high sides, because this cake does rise quite a bit. It's quite thick, so you need a deeper pan. So once you do that, make sure you butter it well. Then just take a little flour and put it in your pan, and then just kind of move your pan around until you get the flour on the bottom and the sides. And that'll really prevent our cake from sticking to the pan. Okay, and then tap it out. Best to do that over the sink because it makes a bit of a mess. So there you have it, and that's our pan. So just put that aside, and then so for our cake batter, if you have an electric stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or really you can just use a hand mixer for this, either one. And this is a butter cake, so it's made in that, like the creaming method it's called. So you will need to start a half a cup, which is 113 grams of butter. As you know, if you've watched any of the videos, I prefer the flavor of unsalted, but you could use salted here. Either one. And then I'm just going to beat the butter just to get it nice and smooth. Okay. And it's a good idea to beat your butter separately like this, just in case sometimes, you know, your butter is not quite, if you just kind of you took it out of the fridge, but it's still a little hard, and that way if we just beat it on its own, that will soften it. So it's a quick way of kind of softening your butter. And now sugar, of course. So you will need half a cup, which is 105 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar. And then I'm also adding 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. And then we're going to beat this on medium-high speed. We want to get some air into our batter. So you want to beat until it's light and fluffy. With the stand mixer like this, take a couple minutes. Okay, that looks good. We're just looking for this. It's, as you can see, nice, beautiful light brown color. Nice and light. So of course, as always, you know, keep scraping down the bottom and the sides of your bowl. And we do that to make sure all the ingredients get mixed together, because there is a tendency for it to kind of stick to the bottom of your bowl. So now what we will need to add is 2 large eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature because they mix in a lot easier if they're at room temperature. And do it one at a time. Just beat that in. And the second one. that a good scrape. So our next ingredient, of course, we're making gingerbread, and in the States we like our gingerbread with molasses. I'm using what is considered a light unsulfured molasses. I prefer, and what that means is the sulfur was not used in the processing of the molasses, and I prefer that type because I find the flavor's a little milder. But really, if you want to use a stronger molasses, that is perfectly all right here. So you will need a half of a cup, which is 120 milliliters, or if you want to go by weight, that would be 130 grams. And whenever you are measuring out something, an ingredient that's very sticky, like molasses, honey, corn syrup, what I do is I always spray the inside of my measuring cup with a non-stick spray, or you could use like a flavorless oil, and that way, as you saw, the molasses will just kind of pour out really easy. It doesn't stick, so just a little tip. And then I'm just going to beat that in. Okay, easy enough. So now for our dry ingredients. We have, now in a separate bowl, I have 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour, you may know as plain flour. And then to that, we have quite a few things here. I have 1 teaspoon, 5 grams of baking soda, a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, which is 2 grams. And then for our spices, because, you know, gingerbread is kind of spicy, so I like to put, now you can vary the amount of your ground spices depending, you know, your favorite way to do it. Personally, I like to put 1.5 teaspoons, 3 grams of ground cinnamon, and 1.5 teaspoons, 3 grams of ground ginger. And then I like to add a little bit of cloves, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. You could also add 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And just put that in. And also, I find 1.5 teaspoons of ground ginger gives me, you know, enough spice, that ginger flavor for me and my family. But you can really, if you want to beef up that ginger flavor, you could add 1 tablespoon, about 1 tablespoon, 10 grams of finely chopped, like fresh ginger. You can buy the ginger root, just peel it, and then you can either grate it or just finely chop it. Or another ingredient, which is very nice in here as well, is you could add about 1/4 cup, 30 grams of crystallized ginger, which is really, it's nice, it's spicy yet sweet. So, and then just finely chop that. Either one. And then I like to add some lemon zest or orange, either one. I find that really brings out all the flavors and perks everything up. So I'm just going to grate the zest of 1 lemon, and always wash your lemons. If you can, buy organic, that's better. And I'm just using you can use box grater or this type of grater. And when you grate your lemon or orange, which either, you know, you can use either one, or you could leave it out, I mean, is make sure you're only grating the yellow part. You don't want that white underneath, because that's quite bitter. And it's surprising how much lemon flavor, the zest of a lemon, that's actually where most of the lemon flavor is in a lemon, rather than the juice. So just, okay, looks good. And so I'm just going to take a whisk. You could sift, just make sure everything's mixed together. You want to really make sure that baking soda and baking powder is mixed in, because if you get pockets of baking soda, you can sometimes get a slightly bitter taste, which we don't want in our gingerbread. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add our flour mixture in 3 separate additions to our batter and alternate that with some milk. And you will need 1 cup, which is 240 milliliters of milk. Now you could use whole milk, you know, depending on how rich you want your gingerbread, you could use whole milk or a reduced fat. I'm actually using a reduced fat, like a 2% here. So I'm just going to add about 1/3 of our flour. You don't have to be exact. Just eyeball it. And then I'm going to mix that in, and, you know, start your mixer on low speed because you don't want that flour flying up in your face. And then I'm going to pour in about 1/2 of our milk. And then a little more of our flour. Oh, really smell all that molasses and spices. So good. And then the rest of our milk. Then I'll just give that scrape down the sides there. Some of the flour tends to cling. And then I'm just going to add in the rest of our flour. Now just mix your batter just until that flour is almost incorporated. Don't like walk away because you don't want to beat it too much or your cake will be a little on the tough side. Okay, and that's about it. Wasn't too bad. So now I do have a little bit of the flour clinging to the side, so I'm just going to take my spatula and mix that in by hand and make sure everything's all mixed together. Oh, it's a beautiful color, this batter, and then of course all that spice and molasses, it's wonderful. Especially at Christmas time. I mean, it's such a seasonal, seems so fitting, a gingerbread cake at this time of year. Okay, so just pour it in. Then and just take the back of a spoon, offset spatula, just to make sure it's level. And then we are going to bake our cake. Okay, I always say everyone's oven is a little different, but you want to bake it, I find, between 30 and 35 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. And you will also notice that the cake is just starting to pull away from the sides of your pan. Okay, our gingerbread cake is now done. A toothpick inserted into the center will come out clean, and I don't know whether you can see, but it's just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. So put your pan on a wire rack like I've done here and let it cool at least 10-15 minutes. When we come back, we will try a piece. So now we're ready to serve our gingerbread cake. Because I consider this a snacking cake, I just leave the cake right in the pan. So that way, you know, you can cut a slice, kids come home from school, or after a casual weekday meal. I mean, you can take it out, but I don't bother. And then, of course, you can cut the cake any size pieces you want. I tend to cut it like into thirds, like so, and then this way thirds again. So you get about 9, you know, generous servings of the cake. And You can serve this cake like it's still a little warm actually. You can let it cool to completely to room temperature, or I mean I've even had it cold. If you store it in the fridge, then sometimes what you can do is just pop a piece, if you like it warm, just pop it in the microwave. So there we have it. I mean, look at that. It's just so wonderfully soft and moist. Great cake. And then, I mean, what do you want to, I dress it up, you know, sometimes with a little powdered sugar on top. And then, I have to admit, whipped cream is my favorite topping of choice here. But I do have a recipe for a lemon glaze if you would like to do that. But really, I really just don't bother frosting this cake. I think it's just great, like I said, with some whipped cream. What also is very nice is if you had some lemon curd in the house, the gingerbread with lemon curd is very nice. Or you could actually add a little lemon curd in your whipped cream and just whip it together. Also, you could slice some apples and saute them in a little butter and sugar. That's very nice. Or pears would be a nice accompaniment. Really, or just have it on its own. I mean, really. What a great cake. I mean, it's so soft and so moist because you have, you know, that molasses and then the milk and then the spices. You know, I like the amount of the cinnamon and the ginger. Like I said, if you want to add the freshly grated ginger or the crystallized ginger, kind of pump up that ginger flavor, do that. Or, you know what, you can even add a little ground pepper. But so good. And you know what, it even benefits from being stored overnight because it gives the time for all the flavors to kind of mingle. So try this cake and enjoy. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.